My husband secretly flew to another country to cheat, then he died there. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel for more videos. My name is Natalie Brennan. I am 28 years old, and I found out my husband was dead in another country before I found out he had gone there to be with another woman. The phone call came on a Thursday morning in November, while I was standing in our kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, making coffee I did not end up drinking, wearing the kind of ordinary morning that has no idea what it is about to become. The call was from a number I did not recognize, international prefix. I almost did not answer. The man on the other end spoke careful, accented English. He identified himself as a representative from a hospital in Cancun, Mexico. He told me that a man carrying identification in the name of my husband, Gregory Brennan, had been brought to their emergency department the previous evening following a cardiac event at a hotel in the resort district. He told me that Gregory had not survived. I held the phone against my ear, and I looked at the coffee maker, and I listened to the rest of what the man said. Next of steps, identification, the consulate, paperwork, and I said the appropriate things in response. The yes and I understand and thank you for calling. And when I hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a very long time before I moved. Gregory had told me he was in Chicago, a work conference, 3 days, the kind he attended twice a year that I had stopped asking details about because the details were always the same. Hotel name, conference center, client dinners. I had packed his carry-on for him on Tuesday evening while he stood in the bathroom doorway and told me about the panels he was presenting. I had folded his shirts the way he liked them. I had put his phone charger in the front pocket because he always forgot it. He had been in Cancun. I called my sister Rachel first. Then I called our family lawyer, a steady man named Howard Pruitt who had handled our estate planning 3 years earlier, and who answered his phone on the second ring and listened without interrupting and said, "Natalie, don't touch anything in that house yet. I mean that. Don't move, don't delete, don't reorganize. I'll be there in an hour." Howard's instinct, I would later understand, came from experience. From years of sitting across from surviving spouses who had discovered, in the wreckage of sudden loss, that the person they thought they knew had been running a parallel life that had financial consequences they were not prepared for. He had seen this before. He arrived at my house in 50 minutes with a yellow legal pad, and the calm of a man who understood that the most useful thing he could offer right now was not comfort but structure. "Tell me everything," he said, "from the beginning." I told him about the phone call, about Chicago, about Cancun, about the folded shirts and the phone charger in the front pocket. Then I told him the thing I had not yet said out loud, the thing that had been sitting in the kitchen with me since I hung up the phone. That 2 weeks earlier I had found a receipt in Gregory's coat pocket for a jewelry store in our neighborhood. A bracelet, silver, engraved, $340. I had asked him about it, and he had said it was a gift for his mother's birthday. His mother's birthday was in April. It was November. I had filed the receipt in the place where I filed the things I noticed, but was not yet ready to examine. That place was full by November. It had been filling for longer than I wanted to admit. Howard wrote everything down. Then he asked me for access to our financial accounts, our shared email, Gregory's home office. I gave him everything. I showed him where Gregory kept his files, the cabinet in the corner of the office he called his workspace, the one I had never had reason to go through, because I had trusted my husband the way you trust the floor beneath you. Not by thinking about it, but simply by walking on it without looking down. We went through the office together. Howard was methodical and quiet. I was there in the way that people are present during the worst hours, physically occupying a space, performing the necessary movements, while the actual self hovers somewhere slightly outside the body waiting to see how bad it is going to get. It got bad. Gregory had a credit card I did not know existed, a personal card in his name only, with a billing address that was his office rather than our home. Howard found the statements in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, 14 months of them, paper copies which told us that Gregory had been careful enough to suppress the digital trail, but not careful enough to throw away the physical one. 14 months of statements. Hotel rooms in cities Gregory had told me he was in for work, and cities he had never mentioned at all. Restaurants with 2 covers. A pair of flights to Cancun booked 6 weeks earlier. Round trip, 1 ticket in Gregory's name, and 1 in the name of a woman named Cassandra Howell. Round trip. He had booked himself a return flight that he did not live to use. I sat on the floor of Gregory's office with my back against the filing cabinet and I let Howard keep working while I looked at the ceiling and took the kind of slow, deliberate breaths that are less about calm and more about staying in your own body when your body would prefer to be somewhere far away from what is currently happening to it. 14 months. The bracelet had not been for his mother. The Chicago conferences had not been in Chicago. The 3 days a year had been more than 3 days and more than once a year. And the man who had kissed me goodbye on Tuesday evening, while I put his phone charger in the front pocket of his carry-on, had been on his way to another country, to be with a woman named Cassandra Howell, and he had died there. Howard found the rest of it over the following week. He brought in a forensic accountant named Dale Sutter, a quiet man with small handwriting who went through Gregory's finances with the attention of someone diffusing something that required precision. What Dale found was that the credit card was not the only thing Gregory had kept separate. There was a savings account, personal, single name, opened 18 months ago at a bank different from the one we used jointly. The balance was $43,000. Gregory had been transferring money into it in amounts carefully calibrated to stay below the threshold that triggers automatic bank reporting. $800 here, $200 there. Irregular enough to avoid pattern recognition, regular enough to accumulate. $43,000. Built quietly, over 18 months, from money that moved through accounts we shared. Howard sat across from me in my kitchen and explained what this meant in legal terms. Ohio is an equitable distribution state, which means that marital assets, including assets one spouse has attempted to hide, are subject to division in divorce proceedings. The fact that Gregory had died before divorce proceedings began did not simply dissolve the question of those assets. It complicated it. Complicated it in ways that required exactly the kind of careful, documented legal work that Howard had been building toward since the morning he arrived with his yellow legal pad. He didn't just cheat on you, Howard said, choosing his words with the directness of a man who had decided plain language was the most respectful thing he could offer. He was also moving money. We need to understand the full picture before we talk to anyone about the estate. The full picture included Cassandra Howell. I did not seek her out. I want to be clear about that, because the clearest version of this story is the true one, and the true one is that I did not go looking for Cassandra Howell. She came to me. 12 days after Gregory died, she called our home number, the landline we kept out of habit, and when I answered, she said she was sorry for my loss and that she thought we should talk. I almost hung up. Then I thought about the 14 months of statements and the $43,000 and the round-trip tickets, with her name on one of them, and I thought that talking to Cassandra Howell was probably something Howard would want me to do, and I said yes. She came to the house 2 days later. She was younger than me by about 8 years, which I had already suspected and which landed the way expected things still land, with full weight, regardless of preparation. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, and she looked like a woman who was also grieving, and was also frightened, and was also, I sensed, trying to figure out what she knew and what I knew, and how much of each we were willing to share. She had not known he was married. That was the first thing she said. And I looked at her while she said it, and I believed her, which was its own complicated thing to navigate. The recognition that there were 2 women at this table who had been lied to by the same man in different directions. Gregory had told Cassandra he was divorced. He had told her his ex-wife had the house in Columbus and he was living in an extended stay hotel while he figured out his next chapter. He had told her he was in the process of untangling his finances from the divorce settlement. He had shown her an apartment listing in a neighborhood she did not know, and said he was thinking of putting down roots. He had been building a story for her with the same careful attention he had used to build the secret credit card and the separate savings account. Gregory, it turned out, had been an exceptionally organized liar, the kind whose systems only become visible when the person maintaining them is no longer there to keep them running. Cassandra left after an hour. She left her phone number. She said if there was anything she could do, and she said it the way people say things they mean but do not know how to make useful, to call her. I sat at the table after she left and I thought about Gregory, about the man I had been married to for 11 years, who had coached our nephew's soccer team and made very good chili and called his mother every Sunday, and had, apparently, been running a parallel architecture of deception, so thorough it had its own savings account and its own woman and its own story about a divorce that did not exist. I had two choices about what to do with the grief of that. I could let it be the whole story, the betrayal, the death, the particular cruelty of not getting to confront the person who owed you the confrontation, or I could let it be the first chapter of a different story, one I wrote myself, in my own handwriting, without Gregory's editorial involvement. I chose the second one. Howard and Dale spent 4 months building the full financial picture. The $43,000 was recovered into the estate. The credit card debt, $18,000 accumulated over 14 months of hotel rooms and restaurants, and a silver bracelet that was never for anyone's mother, was addressed in the estate settlement, offset against assets, handled in the clean procedural language of documents that do not have feelings about what they are recording. I kept the house, I kept the joint accounts. I kept the life insurance policy Gregory had maintained, which paid out because his death, whatever its circumstances, was not excluded under the policy terms. I also kept the forensic accountant's report, printed and filed, because Howard advised me to keep everything and because I had learned, in the month since that November phone call, that documentation is the closest thing to truth that paper can hold. 11 months after Gregory died, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee I actually drank, and I looked at the room around me, and I took a precise accounting of what I had. The house was mine. The finances were clean, untangled, organized in a way they had never been during the marriage, because I now knew every number and where it came from. My sister Rachel came for dinner every Sunday. Howard had become something like a trusted advisor, rather than just a lawyer. I had started running in the mornings, not for weight or wellness, but for the specific silence of moving through the neighborhood, alone at 6 a.m. when the world had not yet started asking anything of me. I was not healed. I do not think healed is the right word for what happens after something like this. What I was clear. Clear about what had been done and what it had cost and what I had built in its place and what I was not willing to carry forward into the rest of my life. Gregory had taken a round-trip flight to Cancun and used only half of it. I took everything he left behind and I built something he would not recognize. That is the whole story. That is all of it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in our next video.